Welcome, everybody. My name is Nathaniel J. Carrasco. You are on the Sky Media Ventures podcast, where we like to interview successful people, authors, entrepreneurs, talented individuals. And today we have a very special guest. I actually got the chance to hear this person talk on stage in front of hundreds and hundreds of people. He is an author. He's an entrepreneur. He's a speaker. And when I got a chance to listen to him for the first time, he was on stage with one of the greatest speakers, arguably in the world, Les Brown. And this guy, I'm sure, has a phenomenal story that he's going to share a little bit in the next 50 minutes. But this guy also owns a consulting business in the construction field, and he's also an author of a book, God's Whisper. So Amir Kendic, thank you so much. Welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, Nathaniel, it's a pleasure to be here, buddy, and I'm honored to be your guest. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we actually had another book author from the Les Brown event. That was Samel Garcia. Did you and Samel actually know each other by any chance?
Not prior to taking the course, the Les Brown speech course,
Okay.
and just only through Zoom, and then I didn't officially get to meet him until the book launch event in Orlando.
Oh, dude, that's amazing. He was such a dynamic speaker. You were very
Yes.
memorable as well. How was that from your experience? Speaking with one of the greatest speakers, arguably ever, to walk this earth.
It was very surreal. I'm still trying to process it, and this has been, several weeks after. Leading up to it, I thought, I'll be nervous, which will be normal. I thought it was going to feel like pre-game jitters, but actually, a few days leading up to it, I was almost having like mini panic attacks. So, obviously, mind going in a bunch of different places, hoping that you're just going to hit. Les Brown has set the bar as high as you can possibly get when it comes to speaking on stage. Uh, you know, People coming to a comedy club are paying to laugh. People coming to a motivational event are paying to be there to be motivated. So yeah, I felt a lot of pressure, but Les was fantastic, shared some great words of wisdom. One of my favorite lines he mentioned that day was, feel the fear and do it anyway.
Absolutely, I love that when he says that. Feel the fear
Yeah.
and do it anyways. It almost makes you want to embrace the
Yes.
hurt or embrace the fear. Kind of could relate a little bit when you said that in my own entrepreneurial journey of just walking into businesses and asking them if they need a service. That's like uncomfortable, but feel the fear, embrace it, do it anyways, and you'd be surprised someone's going to say yes.
Yes, yeah. And what happens when you do that? When you continually feel the fear and do it anyway, you start to learn that the fear is basically a lie. It's a false story.
Sure, absolutely. False evidence appearing real. Amir, I want to ask you something. It Not everybody wakes up every single day thinking, okay, I want to give back good, wholesome information and be an inspiration to others and motivate others. And maybe I've done something amazing in my life, and how can someone else get that too? What made you even decide to choose this route in life? Was this something that did you have a turning point when you were in your teens, or as you gotten older and later on in life, did you decide that this was something that if you didn't act on, it was going to be a problem or something? Like, take us back a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, as a kid, I was lost. I didn't have, really a father figure. I mean, I had an old man, but he wasn't the fatherly type. I grew up in an abusive household. My dad was a very angry man. So I never had that mentorship that comes with, the bond between a father and son. As a teenager, I was lost, bad choices, bad friends, drugs, alcohol. I basically created a facade and hid the real me through being the life of the party, the, rebel without a clue, just huge problem with authority. And I was secretly hoping that someone was going to grab me and say, "Hey, kid, you got something, follow me, let's go this way," but it never came. And so as my teen years went on, it got worse, it got darker. And then I hit a breaking point at 20 and just, hit that threshold of, the two types of pain, the pain of where you are, the pain of growing out of it. and the pain of where I was too much. I couldn't take it anymore. So I chose to take the pain of growing out of it. And that took a whole new trajectory for me in life. And what it inevitably ended up becoming for me in my 20s as I was growing as a man and changing my world and working on myself in so many ways, the one thing that stood out was, my mom asked me, I think it was around my mid 20s, like, what do you want out of life? And I just said, I want to inspire people. I want to live an inspired life and I want to inspire others. I want to feel people that were lost like me and turn on the light switch.
Oh man, that's an amazing story right there. I could relate to you a little, and I'm sure a lot of other people can. How did you make that initial step? You know, okay, you have 20 years of your life, and you've experienced something that you don't like, and now you decide to turn the other way. What were those first steps looking like? Like, did you get a mentor, or did you go into a career path that was maybe scary, unfamiliar? But what was that, that turning point looking like action wise?
Yeah, it's a great question. And for me, it was like a series of downloads that started to hit. I mean, I later called it God's whispers, little seeds, intuition guides that God had planted, but it was up to me to water it. I know nobody came along to save me. That never happened. It was just a breaking point, which was I had applied for a job and not to put this vocation down, but it was a janitor's job, basically cleaning sweat off fitness machines in a gym. And it was a extended family member who got me the job interview. And I thought, oh my God, this is what they think of me. This is the best I can do. And I took the interview and I came home. My mom called me and said, hey, listen, I don't want to cause any stress, but your sister's been crying all day. And I said, crying over what? She said, I can't believe this is my brother's life. I can't believe this is where he's ended up.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
said, mom, it's just a job. Who cares? It's just a job. But when I got off that call with my mom, it kind of hit me. And I thought, you know what? This can't be my life. This can't be it. Can't be this.
And how
So
how old were how old were you there?
I was about 20,
Okay.
somewhere between 19 and 20.
So two decades, two
And
two decades in your life. You know, you're 2 decades, 20 years old. You're a grown man, and the job that you find yourself interviewing at is a janitorial job. And now your sister's like, oh my gosh, like my brother is applying for a job that maybe she sees a vision of you and a version of you greater than what that job title position was at the time.
yeah, my sister, no matter where I was in my life, my sister always looked up to me. I was always the biggest person in her life. She's my best friend. Through all the rough days in our childhood, all we had was each other. My sister was who I hid under the bed with or hid in the closet with. When I was scared to fall asleep by myself because I was terrified of the dark, she would sneak into my room and stay with me till I fell asleep. So, my sister for much of my life was my ride or die. And so when she was crushed, that hit home, that hit pretty hard. So I didn't know how I was going to change my life. I just knew my life needed to change,
Okay.
and I was willing to do whatever it took. And I took a pause away from people and just started to kind of isolate myself away from the bad friends. I cut them all off. And then from there, it was like this series of, I call them, like I said, God's whispers or downloads. It's like these little intuitive guides that said, okay, let's maybe look at going back to school. And I started to do that. And I started looking at school programs. And then from there was, maybe we go get a book and see, in a self-help section of chapters, I went and picked my first book, which was Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. It was the first book I had ever read from front to back that I wasn't forced to read. And then that started the wheels. That
Wow.
started getting things going for me. And then from there, it was just one sequence after the other. When I finished one thing, the next idea came, and it was just ideas that kept forming right after one after the other. I thought about writing a list of 100 goals, and it took me, I think, a week to do it. I can't remember the exact time frame, but I wrote the list as if I had no boundaries, no borders, no limitations, like free will, that
Yeah.
I could do anything I wrote on this piece of paper. And I did. I wrote 100 goals, and you learn a lot about yourself when you write something out like that on paper without giving yourself any limitations, fears, anxiety, or doubts, then you start to really see what you want out of life. And that's what I noticed out of that piece of paper. It was like, oh my God, there's more to life that I want than I've allowed myself to feel.
Yeah, dude, you stumbled across something that we've known for centuries, but I think we have to teach old principles to new things, and it's what I call converting liquid thought into solid reality. Yes, you have to speak it into existence, but really, there's something powerful and subconscious and suggestive with writing your goals down. Maybe setting a date, or not setting a date, but just opening up your mind to the possibility of what could happen. You know, write down 100 goals or 10 goals or 50 goals of just write it down. You know, and I think your subconscious brain and your reticular activating system in your mind, I think it will push that towards you the more and the more you write it down and think about it. But dude, I was cheesing right now. You couldn't see me on camera, but one of the very first books I read 10 years ago, because I'm 29 now, I started my journey when I was 19. Believe it or not, Amir, it was Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins as well. A 700 page book, brother. This is a thick book, bro.
Yes.
You know, you're
Yep.
familiar. And I remember
Yep.
writing something down when I was 19. I put I want to make $10,000 a month by the time I'm 24, and I totally forgot that I wrote that down. And by the time I was 24, I worked an internship where it paid me like 18 grand in 2 months. And so I went back in the book and I was like, wow, you know, I didn't make 10,000 a month, but I was pretty close to it, you know. And I was like, you know, that was an interesting scenario. But hey, what other books did you pick up other than the Tony Robbins book? Just curious.
Oh, geez, you're jogging my memory here, man. It's tough for me to go that far back. That was the one that stood out for me.
Okay.
Another one was a book by Dan Millman. Um, Geez, my God, the you'll have to forgive me. It was something warrior, awaken the warrior within, something along those lines. I can't forgive me. I'm really bad with remembering titles
Okay.
and even names. But
Gotcha. So let me ask you:
um,
did you ever decide to go back into school? You said you were looking at programs. Did you
yes,
ever decide to do something with the program, or like
I did.
I'm curious?
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious how you got into become an entrepreneur and like a personal consultant. Because I'm a consultant
Oh,
as
yeah.
well, and I always pick up gems from other consultants, and I know a lot of our audience they are also entrepreneurs. So I kind of want to dig more into that side of things.
Well, it's a long, long story, you know. So I did go back to school and enrolled myself into a college and did a 1 year program. It was a 2 year program condensed into 1 year. It was web design and e-commerce,
Nice,
and
perfect.
this was before Google. So websites were not very known, but I thought, okay, I know this is where the future's headed. So at the time, we thought of it as like an online digital business card. So I went and took that. My sister had already completed multiple 2 year program in web design. She's very creative and brilliant. So we thought, hey, I'll go take this course and maybe at some point we could start a business together.
Wow.
And I what I did was, yeah, finished. 9/11 happened and the world went dead. There was no work. I couldn't find anything related to what I just graduated with. So I ended up taking a job with a company called Direct Energy here. They're a gas company, they're huge. Started there and started to build my confidence. And I was there for 2 years and grew very quickly. And then over the course of that 2 years, my sister and I started working a business on the side in web design and slowly getting clients and building it out from there. And then that was kind of the first of just starting to establish confidence and self-esteem in the world.
Sure, that's awesome. What a fantastic industry and subject to learn. You know, you're talking about studying web design and digital marketing at a time before Google was as prevalent, and even 20 years after, Google and digital marketing and web design is still something extremely prevalent. You know, believe it or not. I mean, I'm in the industry now, and there's so much demand for websites and any type of digital marketing in a lot of forms. So that's a great, fantastic skill that you learned, Amir.
Yeah, and to go to the question you finished off with is how I ended up into consulting in a business I'm in right now. It was starting with things like that, right? And through evolving through a lot of trial and error, trial and error, trial and error. That whole sequence eventually over time was building my self-esteem, which allowed me to be a lot more open to people and personal. I was very shy if I didn't know you. If you weren't in my high school, outside of my high school walls, I was an introvert. I had no self-esteem, felt very low about myself, had no self-worth. So when I started to develop all of this, it started to expand my horizon and growth in the types of jobs I took and opportunities and risks I took. I ended up, the biggest shift for me was not even work. That opened up my personality. It was when my sister and I were running this business, I decided I wanted to move to California. Um, I just wanted to run with the bulls, see the world. I was developing this thirst and hunger for life that I'd never had. And when I moved out to California, I had no plan in place. I had no job. I had nothing. I just saved up money from the work I was doing and moved out there. And for 6 months, just basically surfed the beach. And when people ask, why'd you do it? And I said, I just wanted to challenge myself. I wanted to do things that scared me. I wanted to become more outgoing with people. So, and my current partner will tell you I'm extremes. I'm either first gear or fifth gear. I am either not at all, you don't move me,
Yeah.
or I'm all in, let's go. And that's exactly what I did. There's so many little things I could have done to develop that outgoing personality, but I just threw myself into the fire and said, nope, I'm moving to California. This is what I'm going to do for 6 months. And I did. I grew, I evolved. And then from there, I moved into BC for a year and a half. I worked in a bar, I worked in the movie industry. So I became this entirely different person, or as my mom said, you became the man you were meant to be. And I became very outgoing, realized my skills were, I'm great with people. I'm really good with people.
Wow.
And
So it
that's
took
how I
it took
evolved
leaving
into.
it took leaving home a little bit, leave home, go to a new environment and kind of figure it out, like who is Amir when you're thousands away from where you grew up,
100%.
and
And then
you just have those
inevitably,
principles, you have those principles and your mind, and you got to kind of figure out who do you want to become, and what better time to do it than in a brand new state, in
100%.
California.
Yeah. And, I said this part in my speech. I don't know if you remember, but it was, when I was looking at where do I go from here? How do I become, something bigger and better? Well, I took a version of myself that I wanted to be, and I stripped apart all of the characteristics that I wanted that person to have. What did he sound like, talk like, act like? What was his thoughts? How was he in a room with people? What was he like when no one was watching? And then I took all those pieces apart and I looked at all the characteristics that I didn't have, and I got to work on all those characteristics to develop the man I wanted to be.
Wow, that reminds me of something that Benjamin Franklin talks about when he carried like 10 different virtues for 10 days each. You carry one virtue for 10 days, and the next 10 days a different virtue until he would try to master that virtue. That's kind of cool how you had to break it down. You had to really dissect and really actually formulate who you wanted to be, and say, okay, this is how I want to sound like, this is how I want to think like, and then I'm sure you built a plan of action of how to do that, every day and stuff like that. I'm guessing, huh?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. I mean, I wasn't. I wouldn't say that I was disciplined in the sense like I had it all written down and graphed and sectioned out on paper. I mean, I knew from 30,000 feet above, this is what I wanted. This is who I want to be. I don't like the man that I am. I don't like the fact that the world scares me. I don't like the fact that I'm angry and lost and insecure and all of these things, and that it's all masked in somebody I'm not. So it was, yeah, isolating different characteristics and just getting to work on it. And it was through trial and error. I had this tagline that I committed to at the age of 20 that has stayed with me my entire life. And it is, I will not let fear dictate my path in life.
Hmm. Tell us how you got into speaking. I'm so now you're in California and you're spending these years developing your true self. How did speaking come into play?
Yeah.
I'm guessing that was after the web consulting business with your sister.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. It came much later in life. So, yeah, I mean, when I got back from my 2 years out west, I had an amazing, amazing life experience. And so I'd moved back home. And I was working odd jobs here and there trying to figure out where I wanted to go. At this point, I'm 27 years old, 20, no, 26 years old. And a friend of mine had lost his job, and he was a sales guy, and called me up pretty down, beat up, and said, "Man, I just lost my job. I don't know what I'm going to do." And I said, "Well, okay, well, why'd you lose your job?" And he said, "Well, it wasn't anything that I did or didn't do. My boss loves me. He just decided that this division that he'd invested in doesn't bring the returns that all his other companies do. It makes money, but it's not making the money that he's making everywhere else." So I said, "Well, Brian, why don't you call him and ask him if you could take all his clients? If he's if you have a great relationship with him, ask him." And he goes, "Well, I don't know anything about a business." And I said, "Well, I do. You sell, I'll help you build your infrastructure." And that's what I did. So
Wow.
while he was out building his business, and it was his business, I said, "I will build out your infrastructure. I'll work your accounts payable, receivable, connect with your, all the internal stuff you need, orders, placing orders, making sure everything's running and humming." This
And he was going to focus on
was,
sales. He was going to focus
he
on
was
revenue coming in.
100%. So he was pounding the pavement 12, 15 hours a day, and I was in my bunker at home working away. And I was working remote before remote was ever a thing. So
Okay.
because I could do everything over the internet and phone, I was able to travel. And so I did. I was in Croatia for a month. I spent about 6 months in England, Costa Rica, Panama. I was all over the place. And I spent 4 years basically just living a life of pure freedom. I would come and go as I pleased. People here thought I lived somewhere else. Really, I was just coming and going.
Wow.
And this further developed me when it came to breaking out of my shell. So now I'm this outgoing guy who you can put in a room with, 100 people, and I would have shook every hand before the end of the night. And this was a huge shift for me. And so as time developed and life moved on, and I moved on from that into other areas of work and whatever. Um, the first seed, I guess, for public speaking got planted in my mid 30s. I was asked to speak in front of 400 students at a big university here just outside of Toronto. And I was nervous, but I did it and I did very well. And there was a lady in the crowd watching, and she came over after. She was a journalist and said, "Can I ask you something?" I said, "Sure, of course." She said, "Do you do PR for corporations for a living?" I said, "No, I'm in construction." Why? She goes, "I could have sworn that's what you do for a living."
Wow.
So yeah, I'd done very
What
well,
a compliment.
and it really was, honestly. And I remember texting my sister. I was so excited. I said, "Oh my God, you won't believe what somebody said to me." And my sister's response was, "I cannot believe how far you've come."
Hey, you have a
So
great sister. Shout out Amir's sister. She's a great support system. I could tell already.
she is. She's helped me through a lot of dark, dark times, and no matter how low it was for me, she always believed in me. She never lost faith in me. And today, when I hear her tell me how proud she is of me, it matters so much because she's seen it all of it. She was there when we were kids, scared and beat to, the strong, confident man I am today.
Okay. Okay. I love that. And so Amir, this journalist sees you. She goes, I could have swore you do PR for a living. What comes after that?
So after that, I was doing small little talks here and there. I would go to little events, and I would speak to maybe, a group of 10, or it could be a group of 50, depending on where I was invited. And it just felt very comfortable, very natural for me. I still wasn't, it wasn't in my head that I'd become a motivational speaker later in life. I just wanted to inspire people. So it didn't matter to me if it was one person, 10, or 5,000 at the time.
Yeah.
And then this is when I started just kind of loosely going on Instagram and just speaking into the camera, and getting a little bit comfortable with that. As time developed, the years moved on, I'm kind of speeding through a lot of stuff here. I started to hear more and more from people at different functions, events I did. It was, "Hey man, you should look into this. Like, this looks like it just fits you. You're naturally good at it." And so I did. I slowly started doing little speaks, And then I figured, you know what? I think what was it, 2 years ago, a year ago, whatever it was, I decided I'll take Les Brown's speaking course to kind of really start to look at this as an option for me in life. And I did, and I took it, and the rest is history.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Other than Les Brown, do you have any other really good speakers that you like to listen to from time to time?
Eric Thomas, I like him. I like his story. I think he's fantastic. Geez, I'm kind of drawing a blank here, man. There are a lot of people that I very much enjoyed listening to over the years. I'll go onto YouTube. I don't necessarily put on a specific person, but I'll just put on motivational speeches and I'll just rifle through a bunch of videos, and it's like a collage of a bunch of different phenomenal speakers.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, for sure. I do things similar to that as well. Tell us about God's Whisper and like just some people might inspire to like write a book one day. I know I do. I want to write a book, but sometimes it's a little daunting. It's like, man, I want to write a book that's a couple hundred pages. Maybe there's somebody listening to this right now that they want to write a book one day. Tell us, like, what was your experience with writing a book, and how did you complete it? Like, what was your, what was your experience with all that?
Yeah, so, when I was 26 and I got back from living out west, I remember talking to my mother and saying to her that, Mom, one day I'm going to write a book. And she said, about what? And I said, I don't know, but I'm going to call it God's Whispers. I think I want to tell the story of, um, you know, my childhood and how I overcame it to, this wild life of adventure I lived in my 20s. And she said, Oh my God, I would love to see that one day. And this was when I was 26. I'm 46 years old now, and this book is now a real thing called God's Whispers. Now, at the
I love
time,
that. I love that right
26,
there. You know, you're able to have a vision, have an idea in your mind, and then you create it into its physical equivalency. Dude, that's so cool. I love to imagine not writing the book and not creating it. You know, that would have lasted forever, but then you've actually made it real. Dude, that's so cool.
yeah, I like this. I'm a man of sayings. I can live with the consequences of my actions. I can't live with the what ifs, right? What if I wrote this book? What if I did this? I don't. I'll go through it. I don't care if I fail. I'm not afraid to fail. I have failed far more than I have succeeded in my life, but all of it taught me a lot. Now, at the time, I didn't start writing the book. I didn't put pen to paper because I still felt there was still too much of a life story that was not yet ready to be told or that wasn't developed yet, right? Um, I had this low, then it hit this arc, and I wanted to know where it was going to go from there. And as life carried on, that arc hit, big lows again, then to a rise into a permanent arc that's never going to go low again. And then I felt, now I'm ready to tell the story. Now I'm ready to write this book because I have a lot more to share.
Sure, sure. How long did it take you to like from like start to finish?
It took me a year to get the rough draft ready. And
Okay. Wow.
yeah, it was a year. It was write, put some thoughts down, set it, and forget it. And then I would come back to it. I would feel inspired to write. Then I'd be like, I don't know what else to write. I'm just drawing a blank. Okay, I'm just going to step away. I'll stop. And then I would get the feeling, okay, I know what more I want to write. I just basically first I started with voice notes, just kind of like what I wanted this thing to look like. Like, what's the point of this? Why are we writing this? Why are we interested in this? And then I started to put it onto paper. No, no, just poor grammar, just writing it all out. Like basically like one run-on sentence right to the end of the book. And then it kind of helped me see the vision of what I wanted this thing to be. And that's why I saw that, okay, the low, the rise, the fall, then the rise again, and the stability to that rise. Then when I finished my rough draft, I had my fiance look at it. She's brilliant, amazing woman, very detailed, very smart. And she helped me. She said to me, she's like, honey, you're a great storyteller. You're phenomenal at telling a story. But this book can't be you telling a story to people. It has to be from the reader's perspective, right? So she
Did
helped me go
did she
back to,
feel like it was like one long story, or what was she trying to say to you?
you know, I'm trying to find a way to articulate this right now, but it was like me talking at the audience,
Okay,
right?
gotcha, gotcha.
And she's like, no, you want to get them immersed into the story as if they're living it. So you have to
Oh,
write
great
it
point.
through something that people can relate to themselves. And I thought, oh, okay, yes. She's like, think about books that spoke to you, all right? Books that you've read in your past, in your life that really jumped out for you. And I said, oh my God, you're right, because those books were books I felt like I could relate to. And so that's what I did. I went in and changed it and wrote it from the perspective of, what people could relate to.
Sure. No, that's definitely makes, I think, a little bit more sense to the reader's perspective. You know, they want to put their own situations, in the stories that you tell, like entwangled within. So I think
Yeah.
that's a good point. Um, I like the saying that to eat an elephant, you have to break it down to parts. And I can only imagine when you're writing a book, you kind of have to think the same way, because when you're writing a book, you might go through a little burnout within a week or a couple of days, and just got to think, hey, let me take a step back, and then let me collect some more ideas, and then go back to that book. Where
Yeah,
could, yeah,
that's exactly what it is. You're right. You nailed it. It's very daunting and overwhelming when you're thinking about an entire book. And it was for me when I first thought about writing it. I thought, oh my God, I've never written a book. What do I know about writing a book? And so it just started with just put little bits of ideas down on a piece of paper, little by little, day by day. You know, it's a marathon, not a sprint. You're not going to write it in a day, 2 days. It's going to take time. It will take time.
sure, sure. Amir, I think I remember during your talk at the Les Brown event, what was really, really awesome and memorable is, didn't your daughter come on stage and she got to be on stage in front of, hundreds
Yeah.
of people as well when you were speaking? That
Yes,
was your talk as well, correct?
it was. I had no idea she was going to run on stage and jump into my arms.
No way. You didn't have
No,
you didn't have any idea that was going to happen?
no. So Jose, who is Les Brown's right-hand man and helped organize the event, he whispered into her ear and said, go run on stage, go see Daddy." She knew I was very nervous. Like my daughter and I talk a lot about courage and what courage means and when we tap into courage. So she knew I was very nervous that day. So, um, she ran out onto the stage because she was so happy for me. I mean, 2 days ago, I just got a bunch of the photos from the event that were finally done. And as we were going through it, she looked at me and she said, "Daddy, I'm so proud of you. Like, this is my 8-year-old kid.
Right.
She's the best thing that's ever happened to me. And, getting up there, I wanted her to see it. I want my legacy for her to be that, dad, you know, didn't set limits for himself, that I threw myself at anything and everything that felt right in my heart.
Right. Yeah, and to give her that example growing up too, so then she could chase her goals, visions, and dreams. And no, that's amazing, man. That type of experience, a lot of kids don't ever get to see their parents speak up on stage and be part of a leadership convention where other adults are there to want to get better. So that's very, very special for you and your daughter. That's amazing, man.
It was like she was very nervous. She told me to run on stage. She was so nervous. And, I could feel it when she jumped and hugged me. She was holding me so tight. Honestly, it was just such a magical, magical moment. I want to say, it's like the third best moment of my life.
Amir, I think myself and everybody in the audience, I think we thought that was probably part of your speech, because it was like perfect timing right at the
I
end. It was like a
know.
bow tie at the end. We were like, wow, this guy's good, compared to the other great speakers as well. So I thought that was a really classy move you did there.
No, it wasn't. It was such a pleasant surprise, and I've probably watched that portion of the video maybe I don't know, God knows how many times I've watched it. I love looking it over and over, and it's something that I'll cherish for the rest of my life. I will never have another moment like that again. I pray and hope that God opens many doors for me to walk on many stages, but no matter where it goes from here, nothing will ever match that moment.
Yeah, that was like a turning point. I would hope for you. Like it's especially with your speaking career, you know, to have your daughter on stage like that.
It was
Um,
huge. I'll tell you, I was very nervous going into that speech. Like I said earlier, I thought it was going to be very similar to just, game day jitters. I competed in my life and I thought, wow, man, it'll be like that. But I felt like mini panic attacks that Sunday all day. And I really did. I'm not joking, man. My chest was caving in, my face was hot, my breaths were short. Now, listen, I've done enough work on myself to understand how to soothe myself, how to work through it, how to process it. But I was very, very nervous. And it wasn't until after a friend of mine said it to me, it was a couple days later when I got home, I said, I can't believe how nervous I was. He said, buddy, what do you mean? And I said, well, it was like I was having mini panic attacks. He's like, Amir, you've done talks in front of crowds before, but for work. This was about being vulnerable. All right. That's different. Like pouring yourself out to 400 or 500 people in a room is entirely different than talking about construction projects. And he said there was a young version of you that was terrified to hit that stage because as a young kid, you always were hit with consequences for speaking up. So, getting on that stage, there was a younger version that was panicking because all I've ever known was consequences for being seen, being heard, and using my voice. So, what I was able to do to that younger version, or maybe many younger versions of me, after seeing the standing ovation, after having my daughter in my arms, it taught me that it is safe now to fully embody who I've become as a man. It was like my coming out party as this version of myself that is finally my most powerful and authentic version.
Amir, that's very very special, and I think God has something very special for your future even now. You know, I think all you have is all your previous years of collected experience invested into your next year of life, and then invested to your the rest of your life. Amir, I want to talk to you about something. I know for my own personal business and life, anytime that I get to put God in the center of everything, or I get to put God first, then really special things happen, and it helps me like humble myself, because when you have a lot of success you become like a little big headed and you're like, oh, I'm the man. But when we humble ourselves and put God first, I think that's just like a really good way to keep in mind that, you know, it's all about him. And your book is called God's Whispers. So how has like putting God first and Jesus in your life like impacted business and personal life and your speaking? Like has it at all?
Oh, more than I could express in just one sit down with you. Humility hit me early in my life as a teenager because I was lost. I was very angry. I was, for lack of a better word, a little, sorry for the swear word, maybe a little shit.
Yeah, sure.
Um, I was, just not the best person as a teenager. I mean, I had a lot of friends and all that stuff in my own school. I was popular in my school, but I was a little shit. And, towards the end of school, after making fun of kids and bullying this person and just being a jerk, towards the end of high school, I developed bad acne. And it was devastating. It was crushing for me. I was made fun of and teased, and all of a sudden now girls that want to date you, and that pain hit, but not from a place of like I feel sorry for myself. It more hit, this is how some people felt when you were making fun of them. And that changed me. It really did. And I'm so grateful that that happened because I was able to go back to some people and really pour my heart out and apologize for how I treated some people. One of the girls I picked on a lot in high school became one of my closest friends, and we're still super tight till this day. But it was such a humbling experience. And I promised myself that no matter where my life went, I will always work on humility. And I have. Doesn't mean I've been perfect at it, but I've always worked at it. I've always believed in God. I lived many years like God wasn't real, even though I say I believed in God. I spent many years angry at God. Some of my darkest times, circled back again in my mid to late 30s. I was lost again in alcohol and drugs and while building a career and raising a family and a daughter and it was just complete and utter chaos for me. And I felt abandoned by God. I felt very angry at him. I remember sometimes being drunk and high and thinking to myself, like, you left me. You left me. Where are you? I would pray uh, before going to bed in a state and just asking, like, where are you? And I was the one that got away for a little while, you could say. And when life got, you know, pretty impossible to deal with again, I was hospitalized multiple times and life-threatening surgery. I was just a mess. My marriage fell apart, was, out of the house on my own, hitting some real low points. And then I met this woman who really helped me change my life. She did. She saw something in me that was different, even though I felt like I was just this lost cause. And she's my fiance now, my best friend. And, I feel that God opened the sky and dropped her into my lap. And it was because of her I started to piece my life together, and through her and healing and really facing all of the things that I never faced from my childhood. I found myself getting closer and closer to God through this whole process. Over the last year of my life, um, I found myself finally breaking through and surrendering to Christ. So yes, Christ is very much a part of my life every day. Every day, the first thing I do when I wake up is I pray to say thank you for everything you've done in my life and for the life I get to live today and for all the experiences that he put me through. You'd said something earlier in the interview about, leaving home to go experience the world and coming back. Well, that's my experience with God and Christ. It was leaving the self and going out into the world, like a kid leaving home only to get bumps and bruises and beat up and gain experience and wisdom, and then coming back home to where it was safe again, which was with Christ. And that's where I sit now, and I owe him everything. My relationship with my partner, my daughter, where I'm sitting in my life, where my life is headed, I owe it all to him. And all those moments where I thought he abandoned me, when I look back now, he didn't abandon me, he carried me. There's no way I survived that period of my life without him.
Mir, that's amazing. It's amazing for you to say that. I could feel the Holy Spirit coming off you, radiating off you, and I could hear it and I could see it. That's amazing, brother. Amir, we're gonna wrap up here in a second. If somebody's watching this and very last thing they asked you, Amir, I want to become successful. I want to become a better father, a better business professional. I want to get closer to God. If you had to give them one last quick thing before we conclude, what are you telling them?
I know this sounds cliche, but it is the truest thing I've ever learned in my life. You don't get what you want in the world, you get what you are. The world is just a reflection of who you are on the inside. And if who you are on the inside doesn't love yourself, if you don't value yourself, then that's exactly what is going to be reflected back to you by the world. All right. The people you meet, the relationships you get involved with, the businesses you try, careers you try to build, all of it, it's all going to reflect something that you don't want. So instead of chasing the world and trying to force things and beat things into submission, you got to go inside and fix yourself. Really get inside deep down into the parts of yourself and really see whether or not that you truly love who you are as a person. Only then can you fully discover your true purpose in life, and will life turn into what you hope it will be.
That
Love starts with yourself. That's the most important thing I can share with anybody. When you learn to love yourself, the world will reflect that back to you.
I love it. I love it. I like to tell people, of course, to invest in yourself because you were made in the image of Christ. Yeah, that's the
Amen.
best.
100%.
But
And listen, to that, just in Christ, like there are people I know that are struggling, that are in very, very low points and think that how could God love me or Christ love me? I've done such bad things. Think about you as a parent. Okay, this hit me. My daughter, no matter what my daughter does, I will love her. I will love her unconditionally, wholly, fully. That's what God's love is. You are his child, and a father loves their child unconditionally. So whatever low point you might be in your life, regardless of how bad it might seem, you are loved.
it's powerful, man. That's powerful. Well, Amir, thank you so much for being here on the Sky Media Ventures podcast. Like I said, we only invite people here who have shown some type of example to the world, to those around us, to your community. And you, Amir, Mr. Kendic, have absolutely shown that. Thank you for setting the example for generations like myself, for people older, younger, and just for being a great example to the world. And that's what we like to showcase on this platform. So once again, thank you, bud.
Thank you very much. It was a real honor to be here, and thank you so much for taking interest in my story. Thank you. God bless.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, everybody, that's it for our episode today with Amir Kendic. Stay tuned. We have some very, very special speakers coming on in the next couple weeks. And don't ever forget, sky's the limit. We believe in you, and you got this. Have a good night.